in moms in general, like that we feel like we need to do that to have that camaraderie. And so I'm trying to make that shift that we can do it without the negative aspect, but how can we incorporate what we're going through and working through and talking through it so we work past it and not harp on it, I guess I would say.
This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Life is like...
Welcome to the roller coaster. I'm your host, Lucy Q. Many of us moms spend the better part of 2 decades putting everything that we have into our kids, our husband, and our homes. We often forget about ourselves until one day it feels like a big spotlight is shining on all the things that we've been neglecting for years. Now, the catalyst may vary. Some, it could be their kids getting a driver's license, helping kids plan for prom, or the first college drop-off. And it can feel like the ground beneath you is opening up and you wish it would just swallow you up. Anything to stop that voice in your head asking, so who are you now? Joining me today is Michelle DeKeyser, who in 2020 realized that she needed something more and started her journey of self-exploration. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like your intro is just reaches my heart so much right now already.
Well, it's because it's what I went through.
Yes.
And it's
And
the story of so many midlife moms.
Yes. It's like coming to that realization that we need to focus a little bit more on ourselves and figure out what that is without sacrificing anything from our families. It actually enhances what we give to them when we actually take care of ourselves, and we forget how to do that along the way somewhere.
We do. And it's really, really important to stress that this conversation isn't about there was anything wrong with being mothers and putting everything that we had into our families. We're not saying that there's anything wrong with that. And there's no shame in, how anyone chooses to, be a stay-at-home mother or a mother in career, or there's no shame in that. But I think so many of us women hit this point where you're like, it's like you hear that the brake screeching and you're like, whoa, wait a second.
What just happened?
What's going on here? Can you maybe share your story?
Oh, I'd love to. So I was very similar to you, where I just all of a sudden woke up and I was like, I love my family. I love my husband. I love my 3 kids, but it was just something all of a sudden, it's like, what am I doing? I felt that I was just kind of stuck in this mode of like, my kids were starting to get to the point where you have those little pockets of time. Like you might get that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes, but then all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, what do I do with myself? And then that's when the questions start to arise. At least for me, that's what happened. Is all of a sudden it was like, I found myself then either scrolling down Facebook or playing Candy Crush or doing things, but then I felt kind of listless afterwards, like this restless feeling, like there must be more to what I could do with these moments of time. And that's what led me to my self-discovery, where actually it says 2020, after like in the midst of COVID, we decided to homeschool our family. And so on September 1st of 2020, that was the day that I officially was homeschooling my 3 kids, as well as I started a program called the 75 Hard. And for me, it was one of those programs where my husband looked at me almost kind of laughing, like, oh, okay, here's one of these other programs she's going to do. And it's like on day 4, she'll be done with it. And for some reason, for me at that moment, because it was something I needed, that I stuck to it. It was one of those programs where if you don't do each one of those things in the 75 days, you need to start over. So like for me, that's what I needed at that moment. And that's what propelled me forward into the self-discovery of realizing that, just a quick backstory on that is there are 3 phases after the 75 days that take you to a full year. And so that last phase is what they call phase 3, and you're supposed to do it a month before the end of your before to finish out that year. And that's the one thing that if you fail, like you can't redo it. So around day 25 of this 30-day phase, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and realized for some reason one of the steps you'd do is take your picture. And I somehow must have fallen asleep doing my reading that I didn't take my picture yet. So I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, I had this disgruntled picture of me taking this picture. And all of a sudden I looked in the mirror and I was like so mad at myself for not finishing this. And then it almost was, in hindsight, a blessing, because it was a realization like this end goal wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. This was the journey of me discovering that if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing every day, then what's the point? And so it was this process of that. It was almost at day 25 was that realization, like I worked so hard to get to where I am. And in the process, I ended up losing 50 pounds and I ended up, but the most important thing for me was the mind clarity and the love of learning again. That's what I realized I was missing. It was like opening up that knowledge and connecting and growing with other moms and having that share. And that's what I wanted to provide for other moms, as well as learning how do we get back to that. Like that is when I ultimately feel in my best, is when I'm learning something new. And so that's what I kind of want to provide and share with other moms, is how do we get there? How do we get to that realization? And how do I do it for me? Because each one of us do it so differently. And that's, I think, where you were talking about, where you get those shoulds in there, like, oh, I should be doing what this other person is doing. No, you don't necessarily need to. And there's no shame in it. Like we do things differently, but let's work together to discover what works for us. And that's a program that worked for me just to start this process. Do I do all those regimens to this day? No, but it helped change my habits. And that's, I think, what it's all about, is figuring out what habits, what things, what kind of person do we want to be? And we lost that somewhere along the way. We became these moms and loving moms and great kids and families, but then this new identity we never took on with ourselves as well. And so now it's like just putting that all together without the shame, without saying I'm taking away from my family, I'm taking away from this, but I want to give more to my family by giving to myself as well.
So in that period between starting to have those pockets of time and starting the 75 hard, did you find yourself, did you either realize now looking back, or did you know at the time that you were in any sort of point of depression? And if so, how far or how deep did that depression run?
I don't know if it was quite depression, but it was like this just negative fog feeling. Like I just felt like I didn't have much energy. Like every activity I had to do was like pulling teeth to get myself to do it. So it wasn't necessarily that like, I mean, I guess you could technically call it depression, but it was more so that it just, to me, like I was still enjoying things I was doing, but it was just this heavy fog in my head that I felt no clarity. I felt like I had struggled picturing like I would do what I need to do if I like had planned out the activities for the kids, but doing something for myself was like a struggle. Like, what do I have for lunch? What do I, having those kind of concepts, I just couldn't come to grasp with what to do with those types of tasks. And it was a struggle, more of a fog for me.
Yeah, for me, it was, I definitely fell into a deep depression. And I mean, I have had bouts of depression throughout my life. So, that in itself wasn't unusual. But I think for me is I did fall far. I fell very, very far down. And I've shared this before, where there was one particular day where, the pain of it all was so much that I briefly contemplated ending everything, just because I was so lost and I didn't know. And I was, looking at my situation, and I was, blaming myself, because I'm like, you've got the husband, you've got the kids, you've got all of these things. What's wrong with you?
Yes.
Why aren't you grateful for that? And, that then compounded everything, and it just sort of drew me even further. And again, I go back to, it's not that being the mother and the wife is the problem. It's how we lose ourselves in that. And we constantly, and I mean, I don't know about you, before you were married and have kids, I didn't really have a strong concept of who I was. So I became those labels as, wife and mom.
I agree with you. And honestly, that question where you said right now, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be grateful for what I have? That like rung in my head constantly. And like, cause you hear so much about gratitude and you should be grateful for the things you had, but it was such a hard thing because I didn't know what I wanted for myself anymore. And so like, I could look at my kid and say, yes, I know I love you, but I don't know how to get past that to like enjoy all the stuff I want to do with you. And sorry, I got sidetracked, but I was on that note. What was your question again? I apologize on that.
That's okay. I don't remember. We have menopause minutes. It's all good.
Speaking of menopause minutes, just I actually listened to your last podcast about menopause and just I love that you're getting that word out there. And as part of that midlife, I think also is that we are starting to have these questions and these hormonal changes and things that we weren't expecting. And the fact that we're having these conversations and talking about how to have the mindset to go with it is so important. And I just appreciate you for bringing that to the forefront.
Oh, thank you. And everything that I do now was born out of that, what I call my darkest day. I label it the darkest day that became my greatest gift, because that was my turning point. I had to hit the rock bottom to find my way back up. And I pulled myself up. I was by myself. I never really had outside sources. I've always been that type of person though, where for it to really stick and work for me, I've got to figure out my way. I've got to do it for myself. I know that's counterintuitive, but now I'm finding myself more and more wanting to be in, these tribal circles of women where we are having these conversations and we are laughing about some of the pain points of aging, and we're finding camaraderie in the similar stories that we share, and all of that. That's what I'm really sort of looking for right now, is that community.
I completely agree. And honestly, that's one of the things that led me to what I want to do is because I felt even in a lot of the moms groups that I was in, there was that negative camaraderie where you were always like, who had the baby spit up on it? And you were trying to get down to who had the worst day. And I wanted to get with that. We're embracing what we're going through, but we're helping each other lift each other to work through it and to figure out what we need to do. And I feel like there's a huge difference between the groups I was in versus where I'm looking for now and what I'm trying to create, because I feel like we need that growth ship. We need that time to figure out how to do this. And yes, we're going to share the bad stuff too, but it's not to top each other. It's to listen and validate each other instead, and to figure out how we can work past that and help each other, and even just getting it out of us that we're not alone. But it's not like this competition that I had the worst day ever, which is what I felt a lot of the time was happening. And I feel in moms in general, like that we feel like we need to do that to have that camaraderie. And so I'm trying to make that shift that we can do it without the negative aspect, but how can we incorporate what we're going through and working through and talking through it so we work past it and not harp on it, I guess I would say.
Yeah, it's not having, just the typical bitch session where all you're doing is complaining, because that's not healthy. Sure, at some level you have to get that out, but you also have to learn how to move past it and find solutions. But if all you're ever doing is complaining and being stuck in the misery, that's where you're going to stay.
Ride.
I remember one of the darkest days of my life, the day I hit rock bottom. When I went searching for answers on how to get myself out of that dark place, I discovered journaling. But when I tried to put pen to paper, I didn't know where to start. I had no guide or method to help me express what I was feeling. The only thing that I had was the blank page of my journal staring back at me. It took me years to figure out the proper journaling method so that I could understand who I was, what I wanted, how I thought, and how I felt. That is why I've taken everything that I've learned and turned it into a guide that will not only help you start your journaling journey, but will also help you start each day with purpose and gratitude. This guide is filled with growth tools, personal resources, and guided journal entries that will help you understand who you are, what you want, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. You can find your journaling journey, your guide to starting each day with purpose and gratitude, on Amazon. And check out the show notes for links. Order your journaling journey today and discover your true self.
And that's how I felt some of the groups that I was in, or at least maybe even what I was thinking I needed to do to be part of the group, and that kind of feeling. And not that it was always that way, but just that's what I'm looking for now, is that we have that camaraderie in validating each other and being open, and the sistership that you were speaking of in the circles. And it's just such a different environment than what I was used to.
So how old are your kids now?
My oldest is just turned 12, and then I have a 9 and 6-year-old.
Okay, so they're still preteen.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
I'm still in the deep throes of it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for me, I've navigated, well, I thought I was going to be navigating it with a semi-empty nest. We have two boys. They're going to be, they're turning 21 and 24 this year. And at the time, the oldest was away at university. So it was only the one. The oldest one decided he didn't like what he was doing, and he came back home. So, I was navigating this with teen boys, and they're different than teen girls. So there was a lot of craziness going on. Everyone was trying to figure their shit out. It was really, and I sort of, I really have to give it to my husband, because he's just sitting there going like, what am I in the middle of here? Like I went off the deep end. Some people may have thought that I should have been committed at the time. And, maybe in some ways it probably would have done me some good, but hey, here I am.
You pulled yourself out. That's the important part.
Yeah. So how has it, now that you've sort of come through it, because we're 3 years later, how has it changed your relationship with your kids and how you parent? And how's it changed your relationship with your husband?
Well, my son and I are very similar, and I think a lot of his, he has some of that negative, he had a lot of those negative aspects. And so a lot of times when I was trying to help him with something, we would just butt heads and we'd end up into a screaming match. I almost throw my hands up and walk away and say, Bill, he's your problem. Like, you deal with me, you got to deal with him. Right. But because I've been working on me so much, that I've been able to approach it in a different aspect, that I actually look forward to interacting more with them. And one side effect of me working to be an entrepreneur, which I never would have ever saw, was he has really been my biggest cheerleader. Like, I even have this note sitting right here from him, just saying how proud he is of me and what I'm doing, which I couldn't see in the past. Like with the things that I was doing, like I couldn't feel that from him. And there's been times he'll even want to help me with a YouTube video or edit it or something when he feels up to it. But like that would not have been before. Like we were always just butting heads and fighting. And I would just, like I said, I'd literally throw my hands up and say, he's your problem. And I'd be calling my husband nonstop. I mean, at that point they were home more often when I was staying home with them when they're younger, even younger. And I'd just be like, my husband's like, oh, she's had a bad day. She's calling me on the way home from work again. And now that's not even the case at all. And as with my husband, that I still think is a bit of a process, because for me, the struggle is more that I'm into all the personal development and working on myself, and he supports whatever I bring to the table, but he doesn't want to do anything on his own. And so that has been a time where we're working through that and talking through that, and we're making progress on that. But I feel like that's harder. But like, for instance, we would start family meetings, and he's sometimes, when I don't feel like doing them, he's the one supporting those ideas. And so he will support things that I bring to the table, but he's not necessarily looking or trying to do anything on his own, which gets frustrating on my part. But it has definitely changed our family dynamic for the better, in terms of us listening to each other. My middle daughter, we'd start We learned the shower from gratitude from, I worked with Lindsay, who wrote the Morning for Miracles parent version. And so one of her things was showering with gratitude. And so when we're in a bad mood, my middle daughter will just be, okay, I think it's time to shower gratitude, guys. Seems like we need that right now. And even my son will be like, Mom, you're being too negative again. You can turn it this way. And he loves to do that to me, but he still struggles when he's in it, but obviously. But it's so intriguing to see the way they're taking these things on. And even my youngest, we were doing a lot more meditations in the morning, and then she was wanting to do her own. When she was 4 and we were homeschooling, she was the one who said, Mom, can we stop listening to him? Can I just lead it? I was like, okay. And so we've been trying to incorporate that more in the mornings. I would say, again, it's a process, and it's not that I do these things every day, but they start to get, excuse me, they start to see these things and they start to embody them more. And that's my biggest goal and love of doing all of this, is seeing it through them.
Yeah. And for me, because my kids were older, they were able to see and understand how our marriage was on the rocks. They were able to see, the pain I was in, and they're able to, and it affected them. And I know it did. When somebody in your family is hurting, it affects everybody in the family. But we've also been able to work through it. And as I've, gained all of these growth tools, I've in turn been able to help them, because going through, hormonal changes as a woman in midlife isn't dissimilar to going through those hormone swings when you're a teenager. So, we were able to, help each other. And, I have one son that's definitely more on the spiritual side than I am. He's the older one. And then the younger one is, not so much. But I mean, we find our own ways to find similar ground and to talk about things. And now that they're also 5 years older in this journey with me, that they're also, when I'm having bad days, they're the ones counseling me back. The things that I've said to
Yes.
them, they're then turning around and saying back to me. And you're like, okay, yeah, like I really needed that today. Thank you. And then you're like, and then you have that little mom moment where you're like, wait a second, I taught them that.
Yes. I agree, because that is my 12-year-old. Like, he will love to just like turn it when it like teach me and show me. And it's like, I know I need to listen to that. And we just came back from Florida for 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And I'm sitting on the beach. I don't know if it was hormonal or what, but like I was having just that negative feeling in my head and stuff. And like we're sitting, like we have a beach house, we're with family, and I don't even know what's going on with me. And he's the one coming to try to cheer me up. And he's like, let me give you cuddles, let me do this. And it's just so, when you see what they're capable of, and just that we're not all perfect. So we need that from each other, and creating that community and that family knit, that you do it for each other, and that you don't need to be perfect. I'm not going to be the perfect mom all the time. And they do get a chance to be there for you as well. And they love it too. They love to like help you feel better.
And
And
I
you was
think,
so
yeah, that's a gift that we can give our kids, is to allow them to help us. That, certainly in my upbringing, it was parents know everything, kids know nothing. But,
yes.
that's not the relationship I've created with our children. And, it is that mutual exchange of love, support, and information.
Yes, I mean, like I said, my son's better at editing videos than I am. So I feel like at peace when he will take over that for me at times when he has time in his schedule. But also, because I did this, he possibly will start his own podcast or YouTube channel because of this, what I'm doing. And so they model what you do more than more, we know this, we know that they're going to model what we do. So the more that we take care of ourselves, they're going to start doing those processes for themselves as well. And that's what we start to see, is those results of my son, when I'm having a bad day, that he's able to comfort me in the way that I would have done it for him, because we keep this modeling going. But when we say that we have to do the martyr mom system and everything's for them, then we're raising our daughters to do that for their daughters and their sons. And so at some point we need to break this cycle. And I think coming together with other moms and having that community, those circles, finding your group, your way to have that process, to have someone else to talk about this and to grow with, is the key to start this process, because we've been so disconnected. Between just the way our society has made us feel that we need to be these independent people who know what we're doing all the time. And if we don't know what doing, if we have to ask a question, then we're done. And that's so not the truth, because we all have our own gifts. And we're just not necessarily even trained to figure out what our gifts are, because if they're not one of the things that was covered in school, then forget it. And then we don't, but we all, every one of you moms listening, every one of you people listening, every listener right now has special gifts inside of them. It's a matter of opening them up and exploring and being curious again to figure out what they are. Somewhere we lost that curiosity, and now it's just time to come together and figure that out again. We need to take those baby steps to do it, because we have been so disconnected. We've been in that independent mode that we need to do this by ourselves. We need to figure this out by ourselves. We can't ask for help. Think about, though, when someone asks you for help. What do you do when someone asks you for help?
I'm there every single time.
And that's the case, but can we ask someone else for help, right? And so it's that process of doing that again. And again, these are all learned behaviors. Somewhere along the way, we learned that this wasn't good. Like we should do this by ourselves. And so it's practice, it's baby steps to do that again. And so coming together with a supportive group is the first step to doing that.
Now, did you create a group then of women?
So what I can create was Connecting Mamas. And so what I'm working towards is I've launched my beta course, but my goal for it is to get moms into a Zoom room and to go through my check-in process. But in that process, by the time they're done with the 6-week course, that they would have their own circle that they would take with them of 3 to 5 moms is my goal. So basically, I feel that we've been so disconnected from each other, we don't really know how to get that back. And so we kind of need that baby step before even going in person, like just to practice that being vulnerable and doing it in a safe space that I create for them and then send them off by the end. But this is something, because people move, people change. And so this is something that can stay with you no matter what, because it's virtual, and teach you then the steps that you need to bring it back into your in-person life. But you always have that support. And so that's what I really just think moms need, is a place to have that support to get started, because these are all learned behaviors again, but we're scared, we're fearful, and we forgot how to do these things. And it's all just about practice and doing it again.
And these, it's not a new concept. If you
No.
go back hundreds, thousands of years, there were always within the tribe of women.
Right.
And they were there.
Somewhere we separate that.
Yeah, and they were there. And I had this conversation with another guest where you had that tribe, and the tribe surrounded you when you were having a baby. So the younger women understood the process and they could see it, so that when it was their turn, they had a better understanding. And that tribal concept followed women throughout their lives. We were never alone. We were always meant to come together. And yeah, I'm going to call out the patriarchal society here, because it is part of the problem. And I'm not saying it has to be 100% matriarchal society. We do have to have the balance, but it's that coming together as community, not competition. And I think that's where things evolved to. And really, going back to the 80s was when most of us were in those impressionable teenage years. The 80s was that height of competition. It was kill or be killed. Yes. It was also the image of the career mom who, she slaved the boardroom by day and she still had dinner on the table by 6. And you're like, what the like, seriously?
Exactly. How can you do it all? And yet the man still only had to go to his job and come home.
Yeah.
But the woman was supposed to do it all. And somewhere along the lines, but then we all had to do it by ourselves. and we had to be independent about it and know exactly what we're doing. And we had to go, because we've got that glass ceiling and only so many women could get to the top. But that is, the more we support and lift each other up, the more there's abundance. Like we can all get to our tops, to our North Stars, if we support each other.
Yes.
And go back to our tribal ways of just that support and acknowledgement of each other and that growth. I mean, just your whole goal is to feel more alive, more in peace, more happy. And so you do that by sharing with each other and bringing out and figure out, who is my true self anymore? Who am I? And yes, you can go get your self-help book. You can go read this and that. But if you don't talk out loud and get that out of your head to other people, it's not going to become reality. And so the only way to do is really to come together and lift each other up.
Definitely. Love it. Love it. Michelle, as we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Speaking of baby steps and connection, and I know we're always told like to go make new connections, you need to like go join a new group or to start with smaller steps. And just for instance, if you're at getting your coffee or you're at the grocery store and someone asks you a question, ask one more question, give one more compliment. Just start that practice of having more conversation, because you never know where it will lead. Again, it's all about taking those extra steps, just one little step at a time, because we're so focused on, we have to go from the top to go straight to the top of the mountain, but we really do have to inch up. So really just to make those connections, start the practice of just conversating again. We've been so locked in our one house, our one box, that like our neighbors, who's our neighbor? I don't know. And so it's practice. Get out there and see what happens.
It's those little magic moments of conversation.
Yes.
That can, they're those little nuggets that can pop up in life, those unexpected nuggets that really can
learn something.
It can create a shift. It can change your day. It can do so many things.
Just giving someone a smile. And so
Yes.
Again, it's our ultimate goal as people is just to find the most joy and happiness and enjoy the present moment, because that's all we have. So doing more to get there, and connection. We are meant to connect with each other and to bond. And the more we stop trying to hide from each other, and the more we just try to reach out. And even as an introvert, you don't have to do it all the time, but it's that practice. And again, it is learned behaviors. So I leave you with, let's just make more connections with each other.
I love it. I love it. Now, to connect with Michelle, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all the links in there. And remember, if you're feeling lost, stuck, and confused in midlife, make sure to grab a copy of my guided journal, Your Journaling Journey. It's packed with tools to help you find clarity, guided prompts, affirmation, and gratitude. And you can get your copy of Your Journaling Journey on Amazon today. I'd like to thank all of my listeners. And Michelle, thank you for joining me today.
One last thing for your listeners that I forgot about, I apologize, is if you guys go to connectingmamas.com, click on the free gift and my mini free check-in course. Come see what it's all about, go through the steps, and see if you want to connect more with yourselves and others and learn how to do it. And I just bring the connection on, ladies.
I'm going to have that link in the show notes as well. Thank you for reminding us, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
La